The first is the inversion of interest between N8N and Claude Code. So
Yes.
anybody in the automation industry for more than a couple of years will know that way back in the day, Make.com was the big boy. What happened about a year and a bit ago was the search graphs for Make.com inverted with a new tool, which had been created a few years ago but was gaining a lot of popularity, called N8N. Then came the era of N8N dominance. Well, what's happening now is basically the exact same thing that happened with Make.com, but we're seeing it with N8N instead. So check this out.
We got a graph for this, haven't we? Oh my gosh.
This is N8N's search traffic over time. As you guys see, even earlier on in this year, N8N was still very much in the lead in basically every way, shape, and form. But Claude Code and then interest in automation in general, right around between April to July, so what's that, like May, June, started spiking. And that's because, Claude Code started gaining a ton of attention and awareness. People started looking at it and being like, what is that? And they're like, automation. And when people are interested in one thing that's automation based, obviously they're interested in other things that are automation based, right? So both of them grew in parallel. And then you have sort of like this mixing where both N8N since July and Claude Code have been sort of like on equal footing. But now, specifically right around like November, December, when that Opus 4.5 update came out, Claude Code is reigning supreme. And so what you're seeing is a tremendous amount of both creators like ourselves, but also companies and freelancers and business owners interested in Claude Code, specifically how to use Claude Code for financial purposes, which has been a whirlwind of a change. And this is more or less exactly what we saw with Make.com.
It is. And I think this graph maps almost perfectly to my own experience as creator in this space. I'm sure as well with you, we saw the rise come. And I think one interesting point is that what's interesting to me is how they kind of grew in tandem, but they kind of felt like they were separate audiences. You kind of had your Claude Code guys over here, and then you had your N8N and Make.com builders. Now I think the groups have separated and they've all kind of distilled in this kind of shaker of like apps, if you want, and they've kind of almost fallen on a winner, which seems to be Claude Code in this instance.
Absolutely. And now people are coming out with ways to use Claude Code to build N8N flows a lot more reliably than we were doing, a few months back. I know this is not a new subject by any means, but the ability for Claude Code to do this well is certainly new with N8N MCPs and stuff like that. And so I think we're just going to see people not necessarily using N8N alone. What they're going to be doing is they're going to be using Claude Code to build N8N flows, simply because N8N is currently like the most easily accessible visual breakdown. Eventually, my thoughts are there's going to be like a Claude Code native GUI type thing, which shows you how your workflows interact with each other and whatnot. Kind of similar
100%.
to, how Make has that 3D grid or graph?
Yeah.
Where you can kind of see it over the top and nobody really uses it. Well, there's going to be lots of those for Claude Code. Eventually, we're going to have like some Minecraft block style thing that just absolutely crushes.
You're so right with that, Nick, because it's the visual layer that's missing. It's almost saying in Claude we trust. We know that the logic's there, but we can't see it and validate it. And that's the thing they need to crack now is the visuality of it. But what's really interesting to me is that the conversation isn't centered around is it N8N or Claude Code or any of these models in these integrated development environments. The question is, why use N8N and Make.com rather than which one of them should I pick? The analogy I really like is that environments like anti-gravity and Cursor and, using models like Claude Code, I see this as autopilot, whereas, you're in a jet plane basically and flying. N8N is you taking the wheel back and learning it. So in 50 years time, we'll be autonomous driving and we won't need to drive the car anymore. That's the reality of it. There's still value in knowing how the car drives and understanding it. But it's like, I've just seen with a lot of the creators, it's like, it's almost explain to me why I need it now. Whereas 6 months ago, as you can see from the graph, it was pretty much like, you got to build it within N8N now. Actually, maybe a really good question, Nick, is when was the last time you built a flow in Make.com or N8N? Like personally dragged freaking modules and connected them and stuff like that?
Well, I still have a bunch of Make.com and one N8N environment for my clients. And so I will have maybe a client request come in once every week or two, where I'll make some small change to their Maker N8N flow. And because it's like kind of already pre-built for the most part, it's fairly straightforward, only takes me a few minutes. But I can't help but think at every step along the way, if I just did this in an agentic workflow editor, how much easier, faster, and better would this be? Like, I mean, I could have just one-shotted their request. It's almost like
Yeah.
I could have built a pipe between our Slack message box and then my IDE. And if they just sent it to my IDE, do you know what I mean? I could just do whatever the heck they want. I
That's
felt
it.
really similarly back when I was running 1 Second Copy, which, if you guys don't know, was the content agency I scaled to 90K a month. And when I started 1 Second Copy, my very first steps towards that business was I got access to GPT-3 way ahead of time before anybody else did. And so I hooked up Fiverr requests to a GPT-3 pipeline where people would say, I want X, and then I would approve it. And then if so, it would actually just go into GPT-3 and write an article based off what they wanted with some prompt hacks and stuff like that. So I find that really, really similar. But yeah, I mean, I'm still building things on and off. I can absolutely see how if I was starting a totally new business and I knew a fair amount about computer programming and some of the concepts like JSON and APIs and stuff like that, I wouldn't really need to. It's just the deployment protocol that I think I would need to figure out. But once you solve that, it's gravy.
The big gap right now is the visual interface, and it's the confidence that it's working, which is great to have in these visual interfaces. But I had to have a big rethink recently of if I had a brand new beginner, how would I actually teach this stuff? Because it's definitely different than it was even 3 months ago. So I've just completely updated my entire worldview on where to start with this stuff, based on how this is going.
I still recommend people start with a visual tool like Maker and N8N, simply because if you don't understand simple things like HTTP requests and whatnot, I don't know, I just feel like the learning curve is way higher when you're just reading it all through text. Being able to lay it out visually with nodes and stuff like that was super helpful for me. And it's the reason why I get to use Claude Code and, anti-gravity and these other agents, I think much better than the average person. So I'm usually like, hey guys, let's be real. Make.com takes 2 weeks to get the ins and outs of. Just spend the 2 weeks. Once you figure it out, everything else will be way easier. But I can definitely see, potential future scenario where that's not the case.
Yeah, the kind of pathway I landed on is I used to say start with Make, learn the basics, then move to N8N, and then bring into the coding environments. But I thought long and hard about it, and I've decided to eliminate Make from the curriculum. I love Make still. I love Make. But I just thought to myself, as a new beginner, I have 3 technologies I'm learning. And you're learning one just to graduate to another, just to graduate to a third. And I think I biased towards keeping it simple. And I landed on, I think it's easy to get a quick win in anti-gravity and Google AI Studio and Bolt and all those places, because you can build it and you get it. That becomes your first initial win. And then I'm like, but it's once you master these platforms like Curse from Claude Code, it's okay, cool. My advice is I still want you to go and learn N8N. But as I'm finding, I know you find this, but as I'm building things, I'm finding my requirements go back is going down a lot as the models actually get better over time. It's awesome for an MCP, bringing in Zapier. I call it the universal remote. If you can't find MCP, just freaking throw it into N8N or Zapier or something, and you get the full suite of access. Or if it's something extremely granular that you need to go in there with some tweezers and start pulling some things apart, the visual interface is cool. But what kind of I think is the big story here is just how quick the market changes. That graph really does show. I think 6 months ago, and we both love N8N, we love Make, we love the teams, we think they're awesome, but it's just wild to see how quickly the market moves around. Make was the king, then it was N8N, and then the movement now to these environments. It's been really interesting to see.